of inspiration, desires, and excellent community services through education and research. Our university organizes a modern, innovative, and relevant education, conduct high-quality research and community services, and also establishes a good cooperation with its stakeholders. We are very proud to be with you. Together we can make it.
As the biggest and the fastest growing institution in the province, Universitas Tadulako has an enormous opportunity to contribute to the quality, aspiration, and success of the next generation. Universitas Tadulako has become the center of science, culture, and art with a significant aim to unify people from various backgrounds. Located about 15 kilometers downtown, surrounded by abundant green areas, Universitas Tadulako is able to provide comfortable learning, teaching, and research activity environment. In Universitas Tadulako, we have various choices of study to offer, both for undergraduates and postgraduates, in order to cater different individual interests, encountering the dynamics of our fast-changing world. More than 40,000 college students applied. Over 30 of them are international students from several foreign countries. International students can be assured that they will receive all supports that they need while completing studies in Universitas Tadulako. Studying in Universitas Tadulako means that students will experience challenges, inspiration and support, or relevant learning opportunities, and be equipped with outstanding skills and knowledge. Today, Universitas Tadulako has 11 faculties, over from undergraduates and postgraduates program, Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, Faculty of Social and Political Studies, Faculty of Economics, Faculty of Law, Faculty of Agricultural Sciences, Faculty of Engineering, Faculty of Mathematics and Natural Science, Faculty of Forestry, Faculty of Medical and Health Sciences, Faculty of Animal Sciences and Fishery, Faculty of Public Health, and Postgraduate. In supporting the core aim of Universitas Tadulako to be the center of knowledge, technology, culture and art in Central Sulawesi, Universitas Tadulako is equipped with main library linked to 11 faculty libraries, an international affairs office, a language center, a herbarium, an information and technology center, and a research center. In addition to that, Universitas Tadulako is also opted by growing numbers of international students coming from Papua New Guinea. Timor-Leste, Thailand, Vietnam, and Egypt. In the effort of strengthening academic quality to meet international standards, Universitas Tadulako has established mutual collaboration with a number of higher education institutions in Indonesia and overseas, such as Thailand, Australia, Taiwan, Japan, Vietnam, and the People's Republic of China.
Did you know enough sunlight hits the Earth's surface in 1 hour to power mankind's energy needs for an entire year? Here at Newcastle University, we're working on ways to harness this energy so that each house can generate its own electricity. Introducing our solar paint technology, organic solar cells that use semiconducting polymers to harness the energy of the sun. At a time of increasing pressure for the energy industry to increase production whilst reducing emissions, our technology offers the prospect of green, renewable, and most importantly, low-cost electricity. With the worldwide demand for solar electric energy growing consistently by 20 to 25% over the last 20 years, and the solar photovoltaics industry predicted to be worth over $100 billion by 2019, our technology will have an enormous competitive advantage in this large-scale market. Our research is focused on developing plastic materials and polymers that can be processed out of water. We do this by taking semiconducting plastics or polymers and turning them into tiny particles or nanoparticles suspended into water. These materials can then be printed or coated just like an acrylic paint. Even better, because they are in a nanoparticle form, we can control their size and shape, and hence we can control the efficiency of our solar cells. Because these are plastic-based solar cells, we can use existing processing techniques to make the devices, dramatically lowering the capital and manufacturing costs. And because we can print out of water, we can avoid many of the issues associated with using the hazardous organic solvents that are used to make conventional organic solar cells. As part of our program, we're also developing new methods for printing these solar cells on large scales and have already invested in printers to produce commercial-scale prototypes.
Universitas Tadulako has become an independent national state university since 1981, after previously established only as a branch of University of Hasanuddin in the period of 1966 to 1980.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Warwick.
Good morning. How are you?
I am very well, thank you. Yourself?
Very good, thanks. Very good.
I see. It's still cold there in Australia?
It's getting warmer. Yeah, we're starting.
good.
We're going to have a very mild spring, I think.
That's good. Yeah. So you are in the room or in your?
I'm at home, and I hope let's cross fingers that doesn't lead to problems, because I got to work yesterday and there's construction directly outside my office. So this is I'm at home because it's quiet, and hopefully you'll be all right. So I think it'll be fine.
Okay, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
From Arjas. Oh, from Arjas. Good morning, Professor Dahlan. How are you?
Good morning. I'm fine.
So that's good. I'm very well, thank you. And then good morning. Professor Siomori. How are you this morning?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm fine.
Oh, that's good. It's really good that everyone is fine, and then we are really okay. So could you please everyone in the panelist room, could you please turn on your video so people can see us. And good morning attendance from Tadulako University, all deans, vice rector, and
Hello, good morning. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Sorry, Mr. Amar.
Okay. All up the speaker, how are you, Mr. Waki?
Morning.
Akrajas.
Very good, thank you.
From Dahlan, okay, Simori.
Alhamdulillah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Good
Nice
morning, Pak Samrun, Professor Samrun. Auliulio.
Yes. Yes, director. Yes.
Pak Rektor, Auliulio.
Beliau. Selamat datang bergabung Pak Muhammad Zamrun.
Tidak aktif. Kemudian Pak Idris Mandang. Selamat pagi, Pak Idris. Saya mau lihat keluar ya. Maybe I will put it back. Yeah, soon we will start. I think it's 9 now.
Okay, I'm ready, sir.
Okay. Good morning, you Sargiani. Sargiani will be the MC.
Okay, sir.
Master of ceremony, our master ceremony, Sargiani. So the time is yours, Sargiani, but
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Elisa. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and all attendees of this seminar. First of all, we give thanks to God Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, who has given guidance, mercy, health, and happiness for us to join this event together. We are delighted to welcome you all on this beautiful Wednesday morning, 16 September 2020, as we commence our event, the second International Seminar on Science and Technology, or ISST 2020. Furthermore, we would like to express our gratitude to the Rector of Tadulako University, who is represented today by Vice Rector for Development and Cooperation Affairs, Bapak Profesor Dr. Insinyur Amar ST, MT. We also give thanks to the Dean of Faculty of Mathematics and Natural Sciences, Tadulako University, Ibu Darmawati Darwis, SSE, MSc, PhD. We would like to give a special welcome to the honorable keynote speakers today, Dr. Warwick Balcher, Center for Organic Electronics, University of Newcastle, Professor Koichiro Shiomori, Nanomaterial and Polymers, Department of Applied Chemistry, University of Miyazaki, Japan, Professor Dahlang Tahir, Material Physics and Energy from Hasanuddin University, and Professor Akrajas Ali Umar, PhD, from Institute of Microengineering and Nanoelectronic, University Kebangsaan Malaysia. Thank you for joining this seminar. We also welcome invited speakers, Professor Dr. Muhammad Zamrun Firihu, Theoretical Physics from Halu Oleo University, Dr. Engineering Idris Mandang, Geographics, Department of Physics, Mula Warman University. Lastly, a warm welcome to all attendees of this seminar. We are honored by your presence this morning. Without further ado, let us begin with the first item on today's agenda, which is singing the Indonesian national anthem, Indonesia Raya. Ladies and gentlemen, the next item on the agenda is praying. We welcome Mr. Faiz Al-Fayed to lead the opening prayers.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to lead this prayer in Islamic way. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, praise be to Allah, Lord of the worlds. Let your blessings and your peace be on your servant and your messenger, Muhammad, and on his family and his companions. Allahumma ya Allah, on this glorious day, in conjunction the opening of the second International Seminar of Science and Technology, we uphold our hands to pray gratefully to thank on your infinite favor to us, till we can live in peace and harmony, to perform our tasks as your servant. O Allah, we ask your blessings to make this occasion in success. Allahumma hayyul qayyum ya zal jalali wal ikram. You are the mercy of the mercies, and you are the Lord of the universe. Give us mercy from your presence, and shape for us right conduct in our plight. We ask you for knowledge, which is beneficial, and sustenance, which is good, and deeds which are acceptable. O Allah, help us remember you, to thank you, and to worship you in the best of manners. Forgive us, have mercy upon us, guide us, give us health, and grant us sustenance. Allahumma ya hafizul ya karif. You are the most forgiving, and the one who loves forgiving. Therefore, forgive us and wish all the participants of the Second International Seminar of Science and Technology a very pleasant and productive one, also a memorable event in our virtual meeting that would be held in the future. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina azabannar. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Mr. Faiz Al-Fayed, for leading the opening prayers. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the next item on the agenda is welcoming speeches. The first welcoming speech will be delivered by the chairman of the second ISST committee. Please welcome Bapak Pastian Satrima Fitrah, PhD.
Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hah? Tidak kedengaran? Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ohayo gozaimasu. Salam kebajikan. Your Excellency, Vice Rector for Development and Cooperation Affairs, Tadulako University, faculties, Director of Postgraduate, and Chairman of Board from Tadulako University, the honorable keynote speakers, distinguished guests, participants, and committees, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Alhamdulillah, praise to Allah for His blessing, and salawat and salam to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. I am honored and pleased to address you today and to welcome you during this virtual ceremony marking the opening of the second International Seminar on Science and Technology 2020, held principally by the Faculty of Mathematics and Natural Science, Tadulako University. Alhamdulillah, in this challenging year, in this pandemic COVID-19 era, we still manage to continue of bringing together academics, researchers, professionals, and students from Japan, Australia, Malaysia, Mongolia, and mostly from Indonesia, who are experts in science, technology, a total number of submission, 108 submission papers. The conference itself will be held for 2 today and tomorrow, and it has 2 panel sessions and 2 parallel sessions. The parallel sessions are divided into 5 virtual rooms, which consist of 10 presenters of each room. The 4 keynote speakers in the panel sessions will be virtually delivered by Dr. Warren Elzer from University of Newcastle, Professor Koichiro Shiomori from the University of Miyazaki, Professor Akrajas Ali Umar from University Kebangsaan Malaysia, and Professor Dahlang Tahir from Hasanuddin University. And also 2 presentations by invited speaker, Professor Dr. Muhammad Zamrun Firihu, Director of Halu Oleo University, and Dr. Idris Mandang, the Dean of Faculty of Mathematics and Natural Science, Mula Warman University. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we all hope this conference will create a dynamic collaboration of students, growing academics, and researchers with the established researchers and experts in the form of this virtual seminar. All the full paper we receive meet the scope of physics and applied earth sciences, chemistry and physical chemistry, material science, polymers, electronic devices, and mathematical computer science. And all the submitted papers will undergo a blind peer review process, and those papers which are accepted will be published in the Journal of Physics Conference Series, IOP Publishing, which indexed by the Scopus. Ladies and gentlemen, and Excellency, we would like to show our gratitude to all committee members of the second ISST 2020 for their profound enthusiastic cooperation in organizing this event. This conference will not be accomplishable, will not be achievable without participation from all of you, from the presenters, from the reviewers, and all the participants, notably the support from the Faculty of Mathematics and Natural Science, Tadulako University. So thank you very much for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Bapak Pasdian Satrima Fitra, PhD. Ladies and gentlemen, next we welcome Vice Rector for Development and Cooperation Affairs, Bapak Profesor Dr. Insinyur Amar STMT, to deliver his speech as well as officially open our event, the second International Seminar on Science and Technology 2020. Bapak Profesor Dr. Insinyur Amar STMT, the time is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Bu Zakrina. This is Master of Ceremony. Before I begin the speech, I would like to convey the best regard from the Chancellor of Tadulako University and apology from him for not being able to attend this moment because there is another agenda and he represented me. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good morning, all the greeting kindness to all of you. Honorable Dean of Faculty of Mathematics and Natural Science Tadulako University, Ibu Darmawati Darwis, PhD, all Vice Dean, Conference Chairman Pasjan, PhD, all Study Program Coordinator, all lecturers, and Civitas Academic at Mathematics and Natural Science Faculty, Tadulako University. Excellency, the keynote speakers on the online second international seminar on Science and Technology 2020 today, especially for Dr. Warwick Berkshire from University of Newcastle, Australia, Professor Koichiro Shiomori from the University of Miyazaki, Japan, Professor Akrajas Ali Umar from University Kebangsaan Malaysia, Prof. Dahlan Tahir from Hasanuddin University, Indonesia, and especially Excellency invited speakers, Professor Dr. Muhammad Zamrun Fihiru as a Rector of Halu Oleo University, Kendari, and Dr. Idris Mandang as Dean of Faculty of Mathematics and Natural Sciences, Mulawana University, Balikpapan. Distinguished guests, all the organizing committee, and participants in this virtual second international seminar from Japan, Australia, Malaysia, and Indonesia that I highly appreciate. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, let's pray and thanks to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, who has been giving us some mercies and blessing so we can attend and gather in this online seminar in good condition and happy situation. May salawat and salam are always given to our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who has taught their people respectfully to other attain happy and prosperous life in this world and hereafter. It is my pleasure to welcome the keynote speaker and invite speaker to deliver knowledge and share their experience in the topic of the integrated sciences and technology for sustainable development. This seminar is organized by Faculty of Mathematics and Natural Science, Tadulako University. I appreciate the effort conducted by Faculty of Mathematics and Natural Science. Ladies and gentlemen, at the moment, I wish a happy 39th anniversary of Tadulako University, which coincides with the 14 August last month. Currently, Tadulako University is in atmosphere of the different educational climate than in professor's year. This difference is very noticeable in the learning process or teaching and learning activity that require us to online system. Even so, academic condition must continue to be created both by teacher and the learners. In this case, our student that we love. All university throughout the words of the expansion Indonesia is feeling the effect of the coronavirus pandemic, but it doesn't preclude an activity that haven't been professionally planned. One of which is the virtual second international seminar that is taking place here today. If we open our eyes wide, we will see significant change in very lengths or our life, especially in the field of the science and technology, which of the course has its impact to the condition of world economic development. During this pandemic, the existence of science and technology has become an integrated approach to solving the challenge and data of the accord. Science and technology innovation, particularly the information technology, have a significant impact in the maintaining sustainable development. Last but not least, this phenomenon has become as very important, but that underlies that the time of the online second international seminar, this time without the topic integrated science and technology for sustainable development. I hope that with the present of reliable presenter in their respective field can broaden our insight. How to improve and enriching science and technology in the digital era, especially in the era of the COVID pandemic. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, and of behalf of Rector Tadulako University, the name of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, by saying Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, I open officially the virtual second international seminar on Science and Technology 2020. And congratulations to you all to gain as much knowledge as you can as today virtual international seminar. Thank you very much for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Bapak Profesor Dr. Insinyur Amar STMT, for your speech and opening this seminar. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the last item on the agenda for opening ceremony today is photo session. I need your help, Elisa, to show some of the attendees for photo session.
Okay.
Pak Elisa.
Okay. I think everyone can turn on the camera. Oh, Pak.
So
sorry.
Seminar room because I will participating on the other activity.
Can you leave for a while? No. Stay for a while, Pak Amar, Prof. Amar. So we will take a picture of our. So everybody turn on the. I think the panelist on. Say that's okay. Pak Pasjan, could you take the picture, please? Muhammad, Professor Muhammad Samrun, could you, the camera is not active. So I think that's okay for panelists because it's, there is a technical problem to put people in. So that's it's very hard. So I think this is enough for now. So Bastian, the time is yours. Yes, sir. Okay. Oh, it's done. Thank you.
Done, Pak Elisa?
Thank you very much, Prof. Amar, for with us.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Amar.
Oh, again, we take again because Professor Muhammad Samrun is just coming. The video is on. So again, please smile, please. Okay, everybody, want smile? 1, 2, 3. Okay, it's done. Thank you.
Thank you. Take a picture. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody.
Rektor, saya mohon pamit, Pak Rektor. Ada agenda lain.
Silakan, Pak.
Oke. Thank you.
Okay, thank you,
Ya,
Prof.
salam
Amar.
buat Pak Rektor.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you.
Well, done by Lisa for the session.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, the fourth session concludes our opening ceremony today. After this, we will directly continue to plenary session 1 that will be led by our moderator, Bapak Elisa Sesa, PhD. I'm Zarkiani Hashim. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Pak Elisa?
Yes, thank you. Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Mrs. Sarkiani, for
My pleasure, sir.
Yes, for the wonderful master ceremony of our seminar today. Yes, very good. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. And then now the time is 9:23 actually, so it's not 10. But for me, I think we just started because we are ready. All people is ready here and waiting. I think people come in, so that's okay. So I think it's good to start rather than we are stop and then going around. Yes. Okay. Thanks to God for this wonderful time, and then we can meet together in this seminar, especially in this this session now is plenary session, or what we call panelist session, and then where we met our honorable and wonderful keynote and invited speaker. So in this plenary session, there will be Dr. Warwick Belser, Professor Dahlan Tahir, and Professor Muhammad Samrun Pirihu. To make short, I let you know that this session will be in panelist mode, which means each panelist will deliver his presentation for 30 minutes. So I will let you know for the panelists, I will let you know if the time is nearly end in your presentation. So just say about 3 minutes. So if I say your times, that means 3 minutes left. Okay, so because we are depend on that time, so that's what we have to do. And then secondly, in the last 30 minutes, hopefully more because we have a time, 1 hour, yes. In the last 30 minutes of our time will be the Q&A session. So if the attendees want to ask questions, please write through Q&A rooms. So there is a Q&A rooms in your screen. So you can put it there during the presentation or the presentation of our panelists. So if you have the question, directly put there, and then we will organize, and then we will ask later in the Q&A session. So make sure that your question is who your question is directed to. So for example, you asking Mr. Warwick or Prof. Dahlan or to Prof. Samrun. So to make sure for the questions, Dr. Warwick Bersel will deliver the presentation on working toward commercialization of organic electronics. Sorry? So you will see in the screen about Dr. Warwick Belcher. Yeah, the Dr. Work will deliver the presentation on working towards commercialization of organic electronics. Before I let him before that, let me introduce him to you. Dr. Berchel is a lecturer of University of Newcastle, Australia, and now he is act as Deputy Director of Center for Organic Electronics. He graduated his Bachelor and Master of Science, and also got PhD in one university, is the University of Auckland, New Zealand. He is a synthetic organic chemist with maybe, hopefully this is a good right one, with 10 publications. I think more. I think Warwick is more, not at 10, but maybe on his name, yes. But I think more than 100, more than. And 2 international patents in the area of conducting polymers, organic photovoltaics, and the development of new materials for inclusion into this device, and has been responsible for the establishment of successful multidisciplinary collaboration with Nobel laureate and conducting polymer chemist, Professor Alan McDermott, and also with the physicist, Professor Paul Dastor, in area directly applicable to this application, I mean organic materials. So, Dr. Welcher, the next 30 minutes is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Eliza. And I'd love to thank the organising committee for asking me to speak today. It's a pleasure. And may I say that I think you're incredibly brave to try and do a conference on Zoom. I've been using Zoom for the last 3 months as a lecturer, and it can be challenging, as I'm sure you'll see. And now if I may share my screen. Can we see that?
Yes.
Okay. So I had the delight of having Eliza and Dharma, 2 of the organising committee, basically as PhD students at University of Newcastle. They were wonderful students, certainly advanced in their knowledge and advanced in their skills. And it was a wonderful time basically sharing and being able to work with them. What I'd like to do today is I just want to take you through some of the things we're doing in the Centre for Organic Electronics at the University of Newcastle. Working a little bit on basically some of the things we're bringing towards commercialization, in particular the organic solar cells and some sensor devices, and giving you a little bit of idea about the philosophy that we have in trying to make these devices and the way we go about doing it. As Eliza said, I'm a synthetic organic chemist. I've certainly developed further skills than that. I'm actually, weirdly enough, in the laboratory now making new materials. It's the first time I've been in a laboratory for many years, and that's been a wonderful thing recently. But let me take you through a rundown of what we're doing in the centre at the moment and see if we can get some idea of basically what the centre's about. So first of all, Newcastle is on the eastern coast of Australia. It's about 2 hours north of Sydney. It's a beautiful semi-tropical weather, lots of beaches, lots of very nice beaches, and about a population of about 300 to 400,000 in the vicinity. The largest employer now is the university in the education sector. And as Liza said, I'm a lecturer, basically teaching in chemistry primarily, but also some physics at the university there. I turned up or arrived in Australia at about 2005, when I started basically working with the centre. And over that time, basically working with Paul Destor, I've now become the Deputy Director. And in particular, I'm in charge of what we call the renewables theme. So primarily to do with the printing of organic solar cells and the printing of organic devices in general. The Centre for Organic Electronics is broadly split into three main areas. We have about 30 staff members, primarily postdoctoral level or senior researchers. And we have people that basically work in the chemistry space, the physics space. We integrate with medicine. So we do a lot of biosensors basically and working towards medical applications. And we have a large number now of the postdocs that we actually employ and we work with are now engineers of one type or another. So we are very much focused on trying to use our skills to develop practical devices. So looking at actually taking materials from fundamental science through to small scale application, through to prototyping, and then finally on to actually trying to commercialize these to actually make actual devices out of them. I'll talk mainly in three sorts of areas today. I will talk a bit about the organic solar cells that we build, these plastic solar cells, which are now starting to reach a point where they're commercial ready. I'll talk a little bit about the philosophy that we have behind making these devices. And it's a little bit different from what most of the literature out there is doing, what most people are focused on in the organic solar cell area. And then finally, I'll talk very briefly about our organic sensing devices as well. So I got brought across to Australia to work with Paul Destor, basically to start to set up our manufacture of, at that time, small-scale organic photovoltaic devices. These are literally small-scale in that they're about, sort of a centimetre, and they're very easy to make in the lab. The key thing about these devices is that they're multi-layer. We have an active layer that basically absorbs the light and then will convert it to energy. We have interface layers such as the zinc oxide and P.PSS, which is a conducting polymer, which allow charges to basically get to the electrodes. And then we have electrodes, in this case, an aluminium electrode, and down the bottom, an indium tin oxide glass transparent electrode, which then can take the charges and complete a circuit. The key thing to note here, because it's really important in terms of our manufacture, is that these are very thin layers. So we're sub 100 nanometers typically. Okay, and so that's about 1/50,000th of a human hair. Okay, so if you talk to a traditional print expert, they are terrified by trying to print things that thin. Okay, that is not your standard printing. So we have to be very careful with cleanliness and very careful with the ink formulations that we make to try and print these devices. On a small scale, it's not too hard. We can use techniques like spin coating to get down to very thin layers. When we try to go to printing these on reel-to-reel printers, as I'll talk about later, it becomes much more tricky. And that is probably the key difficulty in doing this. So here's the design that we have for basically our small devices. We have down the left and right-hand side, 3 electrodes on either side, which are patterned indium tin oxide. We have at the top of the picture a common electrode, which basically is connected then to the aluminium. And we have basically a layer of active layers and interface layers basically in between those sandwiched. Okay, and the light in this case would be shining from below, shining up through the transparent indium tin oxide. Okay, so this is the sort of device that Eliza and Dharma made by the hundreds, if not thousands, when they were doing a PhD with us. So these are the prototype sort of very small scale devices we start out using to develop our materials. We then take those and work them up to larger scale. So how does an organic photovoltaic device work? Well, the key thing here is the active layer, which is represented here by the black and blue layers, can absorb sunlight of different wavelengths. And basically when it does that, it creates what we call an exciton. It's an excited state within the polymer, typically a conducting polymer, that basically has a closely bound electron and hole pair, which basically are rotating around each other, spinning around each other, and they basically are in an excited state. Unlike silicon, where we instantly generate charges, in organic photovoltaics, that exciton is a stable, a somewhat stable entity, and it's only at an interface between materials that we basically can get charge separation to occur. And so what that means is that basically the morphology of our active layers become incredibly important, because we need to have interfaces between two materials to be able to generate the charges. Once they're generated, those charges can move through independent layers and to the electrodes and create the circuit. Sorry. So that's fine. It means that then morphology is very important. It also means that we have to be very careful about those connections between those interfaces, because that can create charge leakage. It means that any domains of those materials within our films have to be very carefully controlled, because the size matters. It means that if we have isolated domains of one material or another, then we can get charges trapped, which basically means that they can't contribute to current. And it also means that if we have the wrong molecular structure, if we have a less crystalline or a more crystalline material in there, that we can have problems with mobility. And this is all occurring within 100 nanometer thick film. Okay, so it's very tricky to get exactly those right morphologies, and the morphology is crucial. What we do once we go from the small scale to the large scale, and here's the printer that we use, or one of the printers that we use. It's a GM printer, so it's a German company. It's been quite highly modified. It's basically just the sort of printer that you would use to print sticky labels. So GM produces printers specifically for that cause. Okay, we then take these electric conducting polymer and organic electronic inks and print those instead. And what we can do is we can print them into stripes and basically pattern our devices so that we can now have basically solar cells that are fully printable. Okay, they're also then completely flexible, okay, and they're incredibly lightweight. Now, as you'll see, the efficiencies are lower than a silicon device would be, but for many applications, and because of the cost of these devices, they actually do become quite viable in terms of energy generation. So what we've done is, and it's a very different approach from what most people try to do when they print these devices, is we've actually looked at going, having a hybrid approach in terms of developing them. There's two main approaches that people use to print organic electronics, or print, in this case, photovoltaic devices. One of them is completely vacuum free. Okay, it's simply printing inks out in air. Okay, and it's very low cost because of that. It takes advantage of all the printing techniques that we already have in the print industry, and it tends to be low efficiency. Okay, so the company Kanaka, for example, basically used this technique. On the other hand, companies like Helitech go to a fully evaporated technique. Okay, and so in this case, they're actually evaporating everything at high vacuum. You can get much higher efficiencies that way. Their best devices up around about 12%, but the cost is much greater. Okay, so what our approach is that we print pretty much everything we can, and then we have actually developed, and we're quite unique in doing this, we actually use vacuum evaporation or sputtering of the aluminium on top of this to form an aluminium electrode. Okay, and what we've discovered is that when we sputter aluminium, that we can get devices that are just as efficient as if we were to evaporate that aluminium. Okay, and so we save a lot of cost. We can now do this all reel to reel. Okay, and so the device in the middle there is our sputtering, our aluminium electrode sputterer. It's basically the same sort of equipment that you would use, for example, for sputtering packets of potato crisps, potato chips. So it's that aluminiumized packaging for food. Okay, and we can use that technique. So it's actually quite cheap. What we've also done, which is quite unique, is we've basically developed an architecture which nobody else has done. Okay, so we have basically put down now, instead of indium tin oxide, we put down silver electrodes. We can actually print those. We then put down our active layers, etc., and then we sputter this aluminium on top. And by carefully tuning the right electrode, aluminium and interface materials, we can actually now get quite efficient devices. Okay, when I say quite efficient, this is about 2.5% efficient. Okay, and a lot of you may sit there and go, well, that's nowhere near silicon, for example, or those Helitech devices. But the key thing here is that it's incredibly cheap. Okay, and using this technique, for the first time in 2016, we produced 100 square meters. This was for our own testing purposes. So here it is, it's on the top of the medical science building in the University of Newcastle. And it's basically 100 square meters of these are our plastic solar cells. Okay, so they're basically laid out there, generating electricity and basically being tested. A lot of these devices weren't absolutely the best quality that we had. This is literally a testing facility. So we deliberately set it up here to try out a whole lot of different things. So these weren't the most efficient devices. They weren't necessarily the best materials either. We test them and see how they will survive out in air and in the environment. And as it turns out in Newcastle, even though Australia is quite a dry country, also in torrential rain quite often. Okay, so that was in 2016 when we first started to get the printing really going. And so this was, if you like, it's 300 linear meters or 100 square meters. In 2017, we were approached by the print industry and asked if we would put in some sort of a display, basically for printing, basically of organic electronic devices at PACprint, which is the Southern Hemisphere's largest print convention. Okay, it was held in Melbourne in 2017. What we built were what we called these solar churches. Okay, so the beautiful pinky red devices that you see there are solar cells. Okay, there are solar cells that are deliberately designed to show how flexible these are. What they did in the evening was basically produce a beautiful light show and just to give people an indication of the sorts of things that we could do. Okay, so again, this was just basically for us a learning experience, trying to work out how we can apply these materials, how we can use them, what environments we can put them in, and basically showing to the public to get some interest. From that, we moved in 2018 to CHEP. So CHEP produces these sorts of pallets that basically that people move goods on. So they're just wooden pallets. Okay, they use about 3% of the world's wood. They're a huge company. Okay, they're massive, and the number of pallets that get produced are something crazy. So in 2017, that's what their warehouse in just outside of Newcastle looked like. In 2018, you can see all those strips there. That's about 150 square meters now of our solar, which we put onto their roof to basically generate electricity for them. Okay, and this was an Innovation Connections project, so it was government sponsored. So we got government money to do it. It was primarily a technology display. There was about 150 square meters of it. And what we did was a 6 months across the summer of that year, a 6 months test and assessment of our devices to see how they were working, how they survived in that environment. Okay, at the end of that, we completely removed them and we underwent recycling. In fact, we're still recycling some of them now. We're developing our recycling techniques better. And so you can see that these are just plastic strips. They're literally stuck onto this with, there's some bolts holding it down in the center, but primarily this is just double-sided sticky tape holding it onto the roof. Okay, and people just went onto this roof and they basically rolled this out as a, in rolls basically to form these devices. What I'll do now is just give you a little idea of what we're doing next. And in fact, Paul Destor was mentioned earlier. This is a video basically that's just recently been put up and taken for the Sydney Morning Herald. And it's just a demonstration of the next stage that we've done, which is we've gone to Lane Cove in Sydney. And basically in a park there, we've actually put now a demonstration of solar cells. So if you don't mind, I'll just play this and you can see what we're up to at the moment.
Yeah.
So that's where we're headed with this. Okay, so we're basically now in the process of working together with some a couple of companies basically to set up what would essentially be a manufacturing a factory and working towards with the New South Wales government to produce what we call solar roads. This will be solar that's basically put along the sides of roads to provide energy in remote communities. How does this work? Why are these viable? A key question that we get asked all the time is, but they're not efficient. And how long will they last? Silicon's 15, 20% efficient. The more important question is, how much does the electricity cost? Okay, they don't have to be really efficient if we can generate cheap electricity. And it's really interesting to see where the industry is focused or where the research is focused. Here are the things that contribute to the levelized cost of electricity. Okay, the efficiency, the lifetime, and the system cost we can control. The interest rates and insulation, i.e. how much sunlight they basically get, is out of our control. 85% of publications focus solely on efficiency of devices. Okay, it's basically who can get the most efficient devices. About 10% basically have some component where they talk about lifetime. Only 5% of publications even mention the concept of cost of these materials. And the fact is, a lot of the materials, the high performance materials that we look at, are just not viable. They are way too expensive or complex to make. We have in these printed materials a key advantage in that we can make them cheaply. So our aim is, in the first instance, to make $10 a square meter for our solar cells, and at about efficiency of about 2 to 3%. This makes them really cheap, okay, compared to a silicon cell. And when you look at the cost of electricity in Australia, you know, the average cost is about kilowatt hour, Australian cents. If we can get at $10 a square meter, about a 3% efficiency and about a 3%, a 3-year lifetime, then we are getting on the very cheap end of that electricity. Okay, so we are competitive in terms of that, even at quite low efficiencies and quite low lifetimes. So these can almost be thought of as disposable devices. They're cheap to make. I like to think of them as the old-fashioned light bulbs, that we can just literally throw them away when they've either don't work anymore or when we've got a more efficient one to put in. The key to this has been making our own materials. When we first started making these devices with bought materials, it was about $75 a square meter to make them. We have now gone ahead and we have basically produced pretty much all of the materials we use in the printing process in-house to make them cheaper. At the moment, we're looking at about $10 a square meter. We're also looking to make our own interface material PDOT in-house as well, and that should bring it down to less than $5 a square meter. And at those costs, even low performing materials like poly-3-hexylthiophene, which is one of the main materials that used to be used for this sort of purpose, but is now not in fashion because it's low efficiency, at only 2%, these now become viable in terms of generating electricity competitively with things like silicon, solar, or coal. What am I doing recently? I've basically been looking at other viable materials, looking at materials in particular that have higher efficiencies, which we can also make cheaply. So here, don't worry about it too much, but here is a selection of materials that we've looked at. And PDCBT, which is up there just in the middle, and ITIC are two materials which, when they're used together, give about 10% efficient solar cells. They're complex molecules, but they're not too complex, because synthetic complexity is the key to having a viable material. Here's a long equation, basically, which simply says, if you look at a function of how many steps there is in a reaction or a synthesis, what the yield for that synthesis is, how many purifications we have to do, we can come up with a figure of merit to determine whether a compound is viable or how complex it is to make. Materials like P3HT and fullerenes are relatively non-complex to make. They can generally be made in a very short number of steps. Materials like PDCBT and ITIC are more complex, but they're more efficient as well. And so what I am doing now is looking to take PDCBT, which at the moment, that's actually a mistake. No, it's not, is about $2,000 a gram, and make it for less than $50 a gram. ITIC, which is about $3,000 a gram, make it less than $200 a gram. Okay, and when we do that, by simply scaling up and making it in-house, we can basically drop the cost of these materials down to where we'll have a total module cost of around $30 per square meter. It's more than the $10 per square meter we currently use, but these are more efficient devices. Okay, and so my goal over the next few months is to produce PDCBT and ITIC at 100 gram scales. Currently, nobody's made them more than 1 or 2 gram scales. Okay, and it's challenging, but it's fun. We've also done a lot of this previously. We've made mixtures of acceptor materials for fullerenes. Instead of purifying them out into pure materials, we've used those mixtures and shown that we can get devices that are just as efficient as some of the other fullerene materials, but 130 times cheaper. Okay, and we can make this what we call ICXA. It's an indene substituted fullerene for about $15 a gram. We can make P3HT in-house for $9 a gram, as opposed to the $120 that you buy it for commercially. And we can do it in large scale. Okay, we can make up to 130 grams one go in batch synthesis. Okay, and that's enough to basically make over 1 million of our solar cells. Okay, it prints about 5 kilometers of solar cell. That's interesting. What we also do is flow chemistry. Okay, so, sorry, this has all gone horribly wrong here, this one. We basically have a flow chemistry set up now to produce P3HT. So we take the reagents, we put it into flow chemistry, we have a reactor, we basically use syringe pumps to pump the 2 reagents into it, and we can now produce continuously P3HT. Here's the actual apparatus. You can see the syringe pumps down there. You can see the various bottles basically containing the reagents, and the precipitated bottle in the middle is our product. And basically on the right-hand side, the slightly greeny looking coiled material is there. It's a reaction line. And what we can do is simply produce P3HT. Here it is dripping out the end and being quenched in methanol. We can take that, and across the course of 24 hours, just running this permanently, we can produce over 100 grams of P3HT at 65% yield, which is basically what you would get if you made it in batch. And from the IV curves I show here, these are just as good materials as you would make in batch, but much less difficult to basically produce. You literally just set this up and go. And if you leave it for longer, you will get more material. Okay, so it's a really nice technique to basically produce high amounts of material, large amounts of material, because we need large amounts of material if we're going to produce large amounts of solar cells. What we also need to look at now is recycling. Okay, we're producing stupid amounts of solar cells, large amounts. And what we have here is the first instance of how we recycle. Coming in at the left-hand side is old solar cells. Going out at the right-hand side is 3 different layers from that solar cell. We have one layer that still has all the printed material on it. We have one layer that's a barrier material, and we have another layer which has the silver electrodes on it. The printed material, we can then just run through. This is a sonicator, and we run that material through an organic solvent, and basically it just comes off. Okay, so we can there now take our complicated multi-layer materials and basically start to strip them back down to the components. The stuff floating on the top is actually aluminium, so it's the aluminium electrode. The brownie material in the solution is now all the organic materials, and what we're left with is a layer or a PET film, a plastic film, which now just has our silver electrodes on it. Okay, and so those are the materials you end up with. What we end up with at the end is clean PET. Okay, and if we're going to recycle these, this is really critical, because even just having the silver on it basically prevents normal recycling of these materials. Okay, so now we can basically take it back, and what we're actually looking at now is taking the redissolved organic materials and seeing whether we can separate them and actually recycle even the organic electronic materials, okay, and make devices from them. And so far, the very first experiments we've done seem quite promising. Just to finish up, I'll just briefly run through what we do in biosensors as well. Okay, so I think Paul's already talked about this to you in a couple of years back, but basically one problem we're looking at is diabetes. Okay, diabetes is a major problem. Okay, many people in the world.
Warwick,
3 minutes?
yes, but we have a lot of time. You can finish until finished.
Okay, well, I'll stop rushing then. Thank you.
Yes.
So, you know, there's expected to be over 500 million people with diabetes in the next 10 years. I myself am diabetic, okay? I know what it's like to basically constantly prick yourself day to day and basically test your blood sugar levels to see whether you need to have an insulin shot or not. Okay, it's horrific. And in fact, one of the things that basically is driving this is that there are increasing numbers of children who are diabetic as well. And to have this sort of invasive testing is not pleasant for them. We actually have also, just as an aside, interest from Adelaide Zoo, who have diabetic orangutans. And they have to quite literally, on a day-to-day basis, test the blood sugar of a really large and quite aggressive monkey. Okay, now that's not fun. They do not want to be pricking those things with needles. They do not enjoy it. So what we are proposing to do is to use saliva rather than blood as a way to monitor glucose in the body. Okay, if you look here, here's a typical sort of relationship between the amount of blood glucose you might see in a patient versus the saliva glucose. It's a pretty good linear plot. So the correlation between the two is very good. You'll notice though that blood glucose is about 100 times more prevalent than saliva glucose. So we need to get down to lower levels basically of detection. Okay. And so what we're doing with Group IQ Global is basically developing an organic electronic sensor for glucose. And it's simply one that we will be able to literally do something like this to. You will be able to lick it or put some spit or saliva into the device and basically read off your saliva level of glucose. And as a result of that, you will end up with a value for your blood level. And so that will prevent you having to prick yourself to basically get your blood level glucose. This picture shows what a typical prototype device looks like. We have 3 electrodes. In the middle there, the wiggly lines are basically field effect transistor style electrodes. So basically we have channels. And then the purple material is our organic layer. And how the devices work is really simple. And this is the key to our philosophy, if you like, is low cost and simple design. Okay, so what we have here is a P3HT, an organic polymer, basically between the source and drain. So that's a conductive layer between the source and drain. There's a certain conductivity. Okay, the 2 electrodes. We then have PVP, which is basically a proton transport material. And then we have Nafion, another sol gel material, plastic material that basically is also a proton transport material. And we embed GOX, glucose oxidase, in that material. There's no sophisticated binding of it to the plastics. There's no grafting. There's no nothing. We literally mix it in with the Nafion when we print. Okay. Then we can add a drop of glucose or glucose solution to the top of this device, basically right over the wiggly part. Glucose diffuses through to the glucose oxidase, where the glucose oxidase converts it and generates and oxidizes it. Then if we hold the 2 electrodes that's across it at 0.7 volts, we actually convert hydrogen peroxide, which is generated as a byproduct, to oxygen and protons. Those protons then can diffuse through the proton transport materials to the interface of the P3HT, the conducting polymer, where it dopes it, increasing the conductivity dramatically. And so as a result, the amount of glucose that we add being channeled through the glucose oxidase then basically leads to changes in the conductivity of the P3HT, which we can measure, and therefore work backwards to directly work out how much glucose has been added. Okay, this is at a high level now of basically prototyping, and we're heading very rapidly towards commercialization of these devices. So IQ group is basically looking to move these towards commercial applications and commercial sales basically in the next few years, very soon, hopefully. But that's only one thing. This concept of basically being able to mix, because of the biocompatibility of organic electronics with biological molecules, we can use this platform to mix in any number of different materials potentially. So the first test case was the glucose, and so that's now at a high level of preparation. But we're also now looking at projects and just about to start a project, a much larger project, where we will look at tumor markers. So for early detection of cancer in blood or saliva. Primarily, we're wanting to look at saliva again. We're looking at immunology, so we're looking at allergens. Okay, so things like nut allergens are a major issue basically for people. We're going to look at basically these devices, and by basically picking the appropriate interactive biomolecules, we can basically now look at, say, for example, a source from a food and add that to a device to basically see whether it's had nuts in contact with it. And we're also looking at hormones. So we'll be looking at detection and working out female fertility using exactly the same platform, where we simply, instead of having GOX here, we will have other biomolecules basically, but use the same fundamental principles to detect changes in the analytes. Finally, we're living in a very strange time, as you know. Okay, COVID is an horrific thing. And we have here in Australia been very, very lucky to a large extent. However, what we are doing is, because we have a responsibility as a university, and because we're very good at manufacturing things within the Centre for Organic Electronics, we've also looked at starting to do a couple of things basically to help with the COVID problem. One of those is we're working with the medicals department at the University of Newcastle to prepare a rapid viral RNA test. Okay, it works on RT lamp concept. We in particular within the centre are working on basically prototyping the actual physical part of this test. So basically determining how we can take the biological part, which has been developed in the medical centre, and basically work towards basically providing a piece of equipment that can, in less than 15 minutes, confirm whether somebody has COVID or not, based on basically a fluorescent technique. So we're building, if you like, the casing and how to detect that fluorescent response. And that's going very well. It's a very similar approach to one that's been done out of Oxford University, but because of our prototyping techniques and our prototyping expertise, we've made a lot of headway on that, and that's something that will happen soon. Secondly, and I hope you excuse this video, but we also have been doing some work, very simple work, to help provide PPE, so protective equipment for medical staff. This is one of our workers demonstrating the equipment. You can see he was quite enthused by the whole idea. So what we did was we actually decided early on, when there was not enough masks at the hospitals in Newcastle, we decided we could do something about that. What we did was rapidly produced what we call the Bradbury, which is a piece of equipment where we can basically produce hundreds of protective masks for medical staff very quickly in a day, We produced, I think the most we produced was about 1,000 per day. These thankfully became, for a while there, we were producing them and providing them to hospitals and the medical staff around Newcastle. Thankfully, very quickly, we were no longer needed because the actual commercial companies picked up the amount that they were producing. And so we were able to stop doing this. But for a brief period, we produced probably about 10,000 masks, which basically went to the hospital for protection of staff. And then finally, that's all I want to say. But I just thought, I'm quite disappointed. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to talk today, but I'm quite disappointed that I wasn't able to come over and actually present over there in Palu. However, I thought what I'd leave you with is just a brief reminder of when my colleague Paul Destor came over, and of the sorts of things that I'm missing out on. And I hope in a year or two's time, when we can actually all get together to have a conference like this, that we might, I might actually get to partake in. So
I take the picture, the video. I took it.
I know you took it. I'll stop now because probably we don't need to actually, have much more of Paul singing. But thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to give you this talk, and I will be available for Q&A later. So thank you, Eliza. Thank you, everybody who's attended.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Belcher. And it's very nice presentation. And then, yes, Dr. Belcher already present to us about the organic solar cell and then philosophy behind, and also about what they doing there, like how they make the materials, low cost material in very cheap, very cheap, and then they doing continuous production. So that's very good. Good news. And then also this is a new I hear about the recycling the device, old device, and then maybe there is a question about later about it. And then also advance in health application. So you can maybe already hear about the glucose sensor for diabetics, and then fertility sensor, and also for COVID-19, this rapid viral RNA test. And also they're doing a production, even though not in the what they call production material. Is a protective mask for the people. Yes, it's very good. And thank you very much. And we continue to the our second presenter today, my colleague, Professor Dahlan Tahir. And I introduced to him. Prof. Dahlan Tahir is born in Salasa, Bulukumpa. And then sorry about that if not good pronunciation, Prof. Dahlan. And he just celebrated his birthday on 7th September. Yeah, so happy birthday, Prof. Dahlan. He graduated Bachelor in Physics.
Thank you very much.
In Physics in Hasanuddin University. And in 1997. And then Master of Physics in ITB in 2000. And then he got his PhD in Chongbuk National University, South Korea, under supervision of Professor Kang Hae-jae in 2010. He's a professor in physics at Hasanuddin University, Indonesia. So there was 86 undergraduate students, 4 master students, and 1 PhD student who have been graduated under his supervision. So yes, very good. And then he has published 90 international publications in several journals. He also invited as a keynote speaker or invited speaker in several international national seminar or conference. Prof. Dahlan, the next 30 minutes or more than that
Yes.
is your present is your time to present the development of multifunction of nanostructure composite metal oxide with carbon for electromagnetic interference, shielding or absorption, and photocatalytic for removal dye waste application. So time is yours.
Okay, thanks. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good mornings for everybody. I'd like to thanks to organizing committee for invited me, and thanks to the moderator for introducing me. Nice interaction. So the title of my talk today is the development multifunction of nanostructure composite metal and metal oxide with carbon for electromagnetic interference shielding, absorption, and photocatalytic for removal dye waste applications. So before that, I would like to introduce the Hasanuddin University. This is the biggest university in eastern part of Indonesia, with the just received the usually from government announced for every years for the 10 best university, and Hasanuddin University this year the seven ranked university in Indonesia. So located in Makassar with 220 hectare in Tamalandrea, and there is also engineering faculty of around 400 hectare with the number of students is 34,000. It's around 34,000. So the big university with the faculty, number of faculties at 20 and number of study program including graduate student and undergraduate students and study program 198. So this is a physics department. There is a research group, theoretical and computation physics, material physics, and we are in material physics, instrumentation and electronic physics, optic and spectroscopy physics. So this is the member of material physics laboratory. I'm sorry. Can you hear my voice? Hello, Mr. Elisa. That's okay?
I can hear you.
Good.
Okay.
It's clear.
Oh, clear. Okay, thanks. So this is the number of my member of physics laboratory. They are, some of them is already a PhD candidate in abroad. So let me start with the introduction. So as we know that every day the number of population increase, it's mean that we need more electronic devices, electronic equipment. We know that the electronic equipment is bring us companions to various activity. It is also improve work efficiency, like what we're doing today. Without electronic equipment that we cannot do remote presentations. But at the same time, it's mean when the electronic devices increase, that's mean more electromagnetic radiations, which has also become a new type of environmental problems. So that we know water pollution, atmospheric pollution, and noise pollution, and this is the new type of environmental problems that we call electromagnetic pollutions. So, but the problem is not only causes serious interference to the instrumentation and communication signals of electronic equipment, but also affect the central nervous system of the human body. And serious endangers the health of the people. So based on maybe physics know that ICRP, International Commission radiation protection that say that's around 20 centimeter, that should be at least the electronic equipment we can put when you sleep around from our body. This means must be at least 20 centimeter because they are danger, because they have electromagnetic pollution, environmental problems. And in other hand, so we need absorber that we call electromagnetic absorption material, or EEM. So in other hand, also by increasing the population, that means the textile industry also increase. That's because we need the clothes, we need everything that's in our related to the cotton and other production is increased. And if we see the global textile processing industry, the Asia produces contributed 39% in the world. So and then followed by Western Europe, 17%, and other country. So this is the another problems. When the picture in here that we can see, this is the picture in Java Islands, that when the textile industry, from the industry, they are do not responsible for the environment, that they are just throw away. As we know that, example, then we use the dye, pigment, or other for the color of the cotton. So that means 100% we give to the cotton, but only 5% absorb into the cotton. It means 95% will be thrown away to become a waste. And this is the big problem to the environment, because you can see in the second row to the last picture that this is in Bangladesh, in other country in the world. So it's mean almost all country, when I checked last night in the website, so almost country that have a problem like that, because the number of the textile industry increase, or also that can be problem to the environment. It's mean we need to like a treatment the water, the waste, the dye before we throw to the environment. So this is our concern in our group. So we try to find that material suitable to provide it the first absorber, electromagnetic absorber material, and on other hand that can be also can be used for treatment of the dye pollutions, or so to reduce the environment water problem. So because you know that we use the surface water for a drink, and also is ecosystem aquatic behind the water also will be bigger problem. So this is the research nanocomposite for related to the removal of dye, organic dye from wastewater. So let me see that this is the use this is that's new synthesized cobalt ferrite oxide with this is graphene oxide monocomposite, the higher degradation efficiency for methylene blue than those of methylene orange and rhodamine B dye under visible light illumination. So this is just example what the people doing, but we have to think, and the second also the same. I'm sorry. This is all two people doing the same thing, almost the same, but using cobalt ferrite oxide with the graphene for the nanocomposite for removal dye. The problem is when we use, because this is they absorb the pollution, the water pollution, they absorb the after that another problem, how to throw the waste become another way, because the organic dye will attach to the materials. So we need another way to remove the dye. So the next also, this is related to the nanocomposite for electromagnetic interference. this is the newest, and they people try to use the same thing between with minimum reflection loss is minus 46.78 decibel at the 13.55 gigahertz at 2 millimeter for 10% carbon. Same thing for the others. So we can see in here, it's mean they use the almost the same material, but they use the different function. So in our case, what we did, we did the first, we use just iron with add carbon active, and then this is the process, like this is activated carbon, and then we add polyphenyl alcohol and then carbonization. After that, we try to get what they can absorb, what the frequency that, let me see in the figure here. This is we measure at the mean minus 10 decibel. It's mean that can be absorbed 90% of the electromagnetic radiations for the specific frequency. Is just is low frequency, 4 gigahertz to 5.5 gigahertz is around that. And then we continue. This is material also for we can check like magnetic session, and also we use the reels and XPS to check where is the consistency of the present the activated carbon. So this is the method how can we our material can be used to, it's not just to it's not to absorbing dye, organic dye, but they photocatalyst. The principle is when our material is get the sunlight, so that's the electron in the valence band will get energy, and they have a chance to, if the energy comes at least the same of the band gap of the our material, so that's mean they can have a chance to excited state to the conduction band. And electron at the conduction band will be captured by the pore of activated carbon. And then the inside the activated carbon, the electron will be interact with the O2 oxygen, and resulting of the interaction that will be produce O2 radicals, and then in the other hand remain whole at the valence band, so they can be captured also by pore of the activated carbon, and inside that they reaction with the H2O and produce OH minus as a radicals, and these two radicals is going to disturbing the organic dye in right hand side, that you can see this is the molecule of organic dye, and they are inside that you can see OH going to inside the like hexagonal structure of the organic dye, and they break the double bond of the organic dye, and until they are open almost all open. And then you can see by the process also, the next process is like oxidation, and then remaining after that, the end of the process, that we can get only remaining CO2 plus AH2. So there is no absorption process in here, just photocatalyst. That means that the electron in the valence band, they get some energy to excited state to the conduction band, and after that the process will be inside the pore, and they can have radicals to disturbing and then to break up the to breaking bond of the organic dye, and remain the water and CO2. And by this process, so it's clean, we can use. This is my our target. So after that, we use the as a photocatalyst, we use again the same material to be absorber electromagnetic radiations. So this is the progress when we apply for the photocatalyst. So this is only 60 minutes. They can degrade it 80% of the dyes. So it's mean that we can is really potential for to be removal the organic dye. So in other hand, that's we use apply again for the Fe oxide. It's not just iron, but now we are going to the Fe oxide. So we want to check what's the difference with it. Let's see the previous slide that I said that the frequency, working frequency between 3 to 4 gigahertz. Now it's moving to the a little bit high to 4 to 6 or somehow is 7 gigahertz. And then we can see also some of the composition that going to below minus 20 decibel. It's mean can absorb up to 99% of the electromagnetic radiations. So this is another characterization with when our sample is exponent inside the material. So we can check also sigma pi plasmon or and then pi plasmon. And when you apply to the, this is the electromagnetic. So this is after that, basically this is the, we apply first to the organic dye. It's mean because there's the, if we just apply for organic dye, this is the next problem. What we can do for to throw the material. So we apply as absorber electromagnetic radiation. So this is for the organic dye application. So is relative decrease to 90 minutes to absorb 89%, 89.5% of the dye. So almost clear the water, so it's remain the harmless of the water. And this is the characteristic of the XPS on the right hand side. So we are continue again. So this is another project. We use Fe3O4 for bonding with activated carbon. So it's the same thing we apply, and then there is some specific thickness that we can get, can absorb up to 99% of the electromagnetic radiation. And then when you apply to the photocatalyst, and you can see in here is around 120 minutes to become harmless. Take a time, but that's after we apply to the become a photocatalyst, we can use the same thing for the electromagnetic absorption radiation. It's mean that multifunction materials. So this is we continue. On the other hand, we just heated the materials, and then we can see they are shift from 4 gigahertz to become around 7 gigahertz. So this is when you apply to the, and the principle, we continue again to add more material inside like a cobalt, and then we check, this is the behind the process for the electromagnetic absorption material. There is a process, and we can see how they absorb electromagnetic radiation. So this is, there are so many things. There is electron hopping, electron migration when the electromagnetic wave incoming to the materials. And we use the activated carbon because they have a structure like a hexagonal structure. And then we can see in the B of the figure in slide. So that's like a net. when we put the net and then electromagnetic incoming, the big radius of atom cannot comes out to the basket. Basket is that we use the activated carbon, so they are still inside, so they cannot move outside. So the it's a little bit, we make it stable only inside, and then the radiation come in, and there is some process inside, spread heat from the one atom move to another atom, and then they produce thermal energy. So they convert from the electromagnetic incoming to the thermal energy, part of the to become a thermal energy. So they are stable because they are, we keep inside the active big atom inside to the like a basket. They have a net, two net at the back side and the front side, and then inside that there is a big atoms. So when we apply to the electromagnetic radiation absorber, so let me see, in the previous slide in 2020, the scientist report is around 56 minus 56 decibel, but we found that is around 90 69 I'm sorry, minus 69 decibel for the 15% for sorry 20% of the composite activated carbon. We add 20% of the activated carbon, and then this is highest than other previous research by in a previous slide we introduced that. So this is our progress. Before that, another our project, so we use CuO, activated carbon, also the same thing. So we apply for the two type of the application, can be absorber, but the first we apply for the photocatalyst, and then back the same material we use for the electromagnetic absorbing material. So before the end of my talk, I would like to thanks to Dr. Darmawati Darwis. This is our collaborator in Tadulako University. Isnaini PhD from the Indonesian Institute of Science Indonesia, and from Professor Kang Hejai from Chumbuk National University, Korea, and Professor Spentogar. This is already have around 10 years collaboration with the University of Southern Denmark in Denmark. Thanks. Hello. The moderator, thanks.
Thank you very much, Pak Prof. Dahlan Tahir.
Yes.
It's nice presentation, mate. Yes, the pollution is there. The new
Yes.
pollution you said is harmless, and yeah, it's dangerous to human actually. I can hear sometimes say something
Yes.
like it's not feeling good, but I don't know if that's electromagnetic pollution, as you said. Yes, and then Prof. Dahlan already said that they make produce or photocatalyst, a ferric oxide, what you call, Prof. Dahlan? Ferric oxide, yeah, and then
Oxide, yes.
yeah, as a
Yes.
photocatalyst to remove organic dye, yes, and then also the same
Yes.
thing they use for
We apply.
absorbing,
Yes.
yeah, applied to absorbing the electromagnetic
Electron.
radiation, yeah. So it's very good
Yes.
that you make this and the two things solving. But yeah, we will see what's in the next picture, Mr. Dahlan. And then you also
Yes.
introduce a new material, not new material, another material to make it better in absorption or removing the dye. It's very good research, Prof. Dahlan, and all. May God bless you and your research more than that. And then, thank you.
Okay.
And then for the third or the last panelist today, Professor Samrun, Director of University of Haluleo University, Kendari, Southeast Sulawesi. He was born in Lambu Balano, Muna in 22nd April 1972. He graduated his bachelor in physics in Gajah Mada University, as also his master in Gajah Mada University, graduated in 2001. And he continued studying in University of Tohoku, take the second time a master degree there, and from 2000 to 2005. And he got his PhD in physics at the same university, University of Tohoku, Japan, in 2008. He is a professor in physics in Haluleo University. And at the moment, as I said before, he has been acting as a rector since 2017, 2017. There was 13 undergraduate students, 4 masters, and 2 PhD students has been graduated under his supervision. And he has published 36 international publications in several journals, and also some publication in accredited national journal. He also delivered a presentation in several international and national seminars. Like today, he invited him as an invited speaker. And then today, Professor Samrun, Muhammad Samrun Wirihu, will deliver his presentation on coupled channel method for fusion reaction and quasi-elastic scattering. Professor Samrun, the 30 minutes is yours.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thanks to the organizing committee who invited me to this conference to deliver my talk. The first 2 speakers, they talk about the application of some organics material to make some equipment for the sensors and for the absorber. Now, I will little bit more difference with the 2 speakers. Now I will talk about the heavy ion fusion reaction and quasi-elastic scattering, but in the theoretical point of view. But before that, I will try to introduce my place. So this is the place where I will stay, where I work in Kendari, Indonesia. The city of Kendari is located near to the Kendari Bay, as it means close to the ocean, the blue ocean. If you want to enjoy the ocean, please come to Kendari. And my university is located in the center of the Kendari city, the area of 2.3 million meter squares. Yeah, it's a little bit broader than the Hasanuddin University. And then we have the 15 faculties, 1 postgraduate, and 1 vocational program. And then our lecture is around 1,700, with the student bodies are almost more than 40,000. So this is the brief story of the brief introduction about my city and my university. Now I will continue to what I want to talk today. So today, the content of my presentation today is the basic concept of nuclear reaction. And then we try to, I will explain about the one-dimensional model to explain success and failure when try to explain the experimental data. And then I will introduce the coupled channels method, and then I will give some application of coupled channels method to explain the experimental data of fusion and quasi-elastic scattering. And the last, I will summary of my talk. So my talk today is long research of my study. It's around more than 10 years. I work in this topic. So today I will give you some of what we have done, and then what we have, what will be done around about this study. So the basic concept of nuclear reaction, as we know that, I mean, physicists know that the shape, the interaction, and excitation structure of the nuclei can be studied from a scattering experiment. And one of the famous experiment is done by Rutherford for alpha scattering. So that means usually the notation of the nuclear reaction is given by, we have the projectile and then we have the target nuclei. When the projectile hit the target, and then some of the flux will be reflected by the target and then will be detected by the detector. So that the concept of nuclear reaction is, I mean, the basic concept of nuclear reaction is looks like that. And then we know, I mean, physics, as a student of physics, we know about this kind of notation. Now, the heavy ion means is the nuclei heavier than helium-4. So when the target and projectile and target it come close together, so they will yield the two force, that is Coulomb force, which have a long range and repulsive, and then the nuclear force will which is short range and attractive. The compensation between these two force will give the what we call it the potential barrier. Potential barrier, which is given by the red line in this picture. So that this is the Coulomb force, and then this is the blue line is the nuclear force, and then the compensation between the Coulomb force and the nuclear force. Sorry, nuclear force will give you the potential barrier, and this is the barrier height, and then this is the barrier radius. So this kind of things. So when the flux of the particle transmitted or overcome the barriers, so this means is defined as diffusion, and then all the flux particle reflected by the barrier, we call it quasi-elastic scattering. So the diffusion and quasi-elastic scattering is the inclusive process where diffusion is connected to the transmission, then a quasi-elastic scattering is connected with the reflection. So there are three important features of heavy ion reaction. The first one is Coulomb interaction that I said before, and then two, they have the large radius mass, and then three is we have the strong absorption inside the Coulomb barrier. So diffusion is defined when this is the example of oxygen 16 and samarium 54. Diffusion is defined when the projectile and the target is touching. So this is the mean. We assume that diffusion already occurs. So we try to using this phenomena to explain the experimental data of fusion and quasi-elastic scattering. So in the potential model, that means we just only consider the relative motion between target and projectile, and the Schrodinger equation for that system is given by this equation. And then we use this this equation by using the asymptotic boundary condition, and then diffusion cross-section is calculated by this equation. So because experimentally, the fusion cross-section can be measured, and then the obtained fusion cross-section experimentally is compared with calculated using the potential model, what we call is potential model. So this is this kind of prediction of potential model comparing with the experimental data for some fusion reaction. Here is oxygen 16 plus aluminum 27 from the, and then until the more heavier nuclei 40 argon plus samarium 144. We can see here that for relatively like system, the potential model. So the line here is the potential model calculation, and the circle solid line, a circle solid is the experimental data. We can see here for this kind of system, the potential model can explain the experimental data very well. But unfortunately, for more heavy system, at low energy, the experimental data, or I mean the calculation and the experimental data is a little bit different. For more higher system, the differences between the experimental data and the calculation is large. That means is for light system, the potential model can explain the experimental data, but for heavy system, the experimental data of fusion cross-section cannot be reproduced by the calculation. So, potential model can reproduce the experimental data reasonably well, just only for the experimental data for energies above the Coulomb barrier. But it's underpredicted the experimental data for energies below the Coulomb barrier. So it's I mean, all the physicists, I mean, all the researchers try to explain what is the origin, the difference between experimental data and the calculation. And then there are methods for try to solve that problem that we call is coupled channels formalism. Coupled channel formalism here, we try to include the effect of channel couplings in the calculation. In the potential model, we just have these two terms, that is just only the relative motion. By including the channel couplings, the channel couplings, that means the intrinsic degrees of freedom of the nuclei, so, and then coupled to the relative motion. So this is the for the relative motion, this is the Hamiltonian for the intrinsic degrees of motion of the nuclei, and then this is the coupling between this intrinsic degrees of motion and the relative motion between these two nuclei. So we have, that's why we call it coupled channels formalism, because we include the coupling between the intrinsic degrees of motion and the relative motion between two nuclei. And then by make some approximation, then we have the what we call it the coupled channels calculation for this system, for example, for the target and the projectile. So we have to solve this equation. Of course, we solve this equation numerically to obtain the fusion cross-section. So this is the relative motion, this is the intrinsic degrees of motion, and then this is the coupling between the intrinsic degrees of motion and the relative motion between these two particles, that is the projectile and the target. Now, the problem is how to solve the coupling potential here. So this we call it the coupling potential, how to treat this coupling potential. The coupling potential, because we have the two potential that I said before, that the nuclear potential and the Coulomb potential. That means also the coupling potential also include the coupling potential for the nuclear and the coupling potential for the Coulomb potential. And then this is in this model, we use the Wood-Saxon model for the collective model is given by this equation. So the coupling the coupling is included in this matrix O. So this matrix O for the include the coupling between two for the intrinsic degrees of motion of the target nuclei. That means we include the ground state properties of the nuclei, both of the target and the projectile. It could be the vibrational state or rotational state. The rotational coupling is given by this equation. If we include only the coupling until to the 2 plus. And this is the vibrational coupling if we only include until the first vibrational state. So, and then we have to include this by diagonalize this matrix element for the vibrational coupling and the matrix element for the rotational coupling. And then we solve this, and then we solve this coupled channels equation by using the scattering state boundary condition is given by this equation. So, and then the code we use is the CCQL code. This code is written by my supervisor and of course and me. And then this code is has been used for many researchers connected how to calculate the fusion cross-section and quasi-elastic cross-section. And then by using this kind of the scattering wave boundary condition, we solve the coupled channel calculation, and then we calculate the fusion cross-section is given by this. P is the transmission probability for each channel. So we have the incoming wave, and then we have the scattering wave, and this all connect scattering wave, and then this connected with this transmission probability. And then quasi-elastic scattering, a quasi-elastic cross-section is calculated by this equation where it's a function of the Coulomb phase shift and nuclear phase shift. And then we use this we calculated with our code, and then to calculate the fusion cross-section and quasi-elastic cross-section. In the next step, I will show you the result of our calculation compared with the experimental data. So another concept that I want to try to explain to you is instead of fusion cross-section, so this is the fusion cross-section, this is the calculation, and this is the experimental data for 3 target. With the projectile is the same, is oxygen 16, but the target is samarium 144, samarium 148, and samarium 154. So I will show you later on that the fusion cross-section is just only sensitive or depends only the exponential energy. But Rowley and Sassler, they tried to plot cross-section in a different way, and then they call it the fusion barrier distribution, is that defined as the second derivative of multiplying of energy in fusion cross-section to energy. So this function is very sensitive to the detail of nuclear structure. So what I would like to explain to you, what I would like to tell you, that the cross-section is not only depend of the intrinsic degrees of freedom itself, but also depends of the shape of the nuclei. I will show you later on. So this is the coupled channels calculation for the fusion cross-section. This is the fusion cross-section. The solid circle is the experimental data, and then the line is the calculation. This is the potential model calculation, And then the red and the blue line is the couple channels calculation. We just only, the red line just only include the deformation parameter until to beta 2, and then the blue line, when the calculation, the couple channel calculation included the beta 2 and beta 4. If we just only see the fusion cross-section, there is no difference between the blue line and the red line. But when we see the fusion barrier distribution, we clearly see seeing that the blue line and the red line is totally different. Also for the oxygen 16 with the tungsten 186. What I would like to say that, so the structure of the target, it's important in order to explain the experimental data. That means by using the experimental data of fusion reaction, we can determine the shape of the nuclei. It's the former or spherical. So that means the fusion as a quantum can be treatment as a quantum tunneling microscope for the nuclei. And also that from this is what we have done around 10 years ago when we calculate, when we study the germanium, because there are kind of debate that the germanium, some people say that germanium is spherical, some people say that the germanium is deformed. And then our calculation showed that the germanium 74 seems to be spherical. And then also we try to apply the potential model as well as the couple channels model to study the stellar burning carbon and oxygen burning. And then here we can explain the experimental data of oxygen 16 plus oxygen 16 for the cross-section. And then because in the astrophysics, the fusion cross-section far below the Coulomb barrier is hardly to measure, and then they define some parameters that we call it astrophysical S factor is given by this equation. And also our calculation can explain the experimental data both for the cross-section and the astrophysical S factor. And then now I will try to explain to you about the quasi-elastic scattering. Quasi-elastic scattering is the sum of the elastic, inelastic, and transfer. That means all but fusion is defined as quasi-elastic scattering, as I said before, because reflection and transmission is unity. That means the fusion and quasi-elastic scattering is a complementary between each other. That means if we know some information about from the fusion, and also automatically we can also obtain the information by study the quasi-elastic scattering. And then we already shown that the fusion and quasi-elastic is connecting to each other, because in fusion we have the fusion barrier distribution, and then in the quasi-elastic scattering we have the quasi-elastic barrier distribution. And and from the calculation and also the experimental data, we already shown that the quasi-elastic barrier distribution and fusion barrier distribution are similar to each other is given by this equation. So for this system, one oxygen 16 plus samarium 154, the blue line is the fusion barrier distribution, while the red line is the quasi-elastic barrier distribution. And we can see that these two barrier distribution are similar each other. And also we calculate for another system that is oxygen 16 plus samarium 144 for fusion and quasi-elastic barrier distribution. And then already we have shown that these two barrier distribution are similar to each other. And then we try also to calculate, because if in fusion we have fusion cross-section, and also in the quasi-elastic scattering we have quasi-elastic cross-section. So this is we have applied the couples channels method in order to explain the experimental data of quasi-elastic scattering and quasi-elastic barrier distribution. This is one of the example of the ground state properties of the samarium 144. We include all these things. So 2 plus, 3 minus with the energy 1.6 mega electron volt and 1.81 mega electron volt. So we include all these properties in our coupled channels calculation in the coupled channels in the coupling matrix element. And then this is the result of our calculation. By include all this state is given by the red line, and then we can clearly see that the experimental data is well reproduced by the calculation. And then we try also for another system, for more heavy system. This is for Chrome 44 and PB208. And also all the calculation can reproduce the experimental data. And then we improve our calculation in the 8 years after. And then also this is the calculation, and then they compared with the experimental data. And then we can see that our method, our coupled channels method, can explain the experimental data very well. So maybe you can ask why they do this. So in the heavy ion reaction, by do the experiment and measure the fusion cross-section, it means we know, or we can define that there already formed a new nuclei. So to form a new nuclei, we have to study the dynamics of the reaction to make the new elements. Another interesting thing is from the data of quasi-elastic scattering, we can define, or we can extract the surface diffuseness parameter of the nuclear potential. That means A, we call it, in our community in fusion, the people or the physicists who study the nuclear reaction, the problem is how to define the surface diffuseness parameter of the nuclear potential. And then by using the quasi-elastic scattering experimental data, we can extract the A with less ambiguity. And then I can show here that this is the, three researchers where from the experimental data of quasi-elastic scattering, they can extract the surface diffuseness. The well-accepted surface diffuseness parameter A is around 0.5 to 0.7 femtometer. And then we saw here that the surface diffuseness parameter extracted from the experimental data is almost 0.6 femtometer. It means this is consistent with the well-accepted experimental data from scattering and elastic scattering experiment. And then many other things. This is what we have tried to extract the surface diffuseness parameter by using another experimental data. We do the calculation for many surface diffuseness parameter from small value to large value, and then we interpolate to find the optimum chi-square value. And then for example here, the optimum chi-square value is around 0.83. It means from this reaction. But this is by using the potential model calculation. That means we didn't include the channel coupling or intrinsic motion to our calculation. But when we include the coupled channels, I mean the intrinsic degrees of freedom of the projectile and the target, we obtain the surface diffuseness parameter is around 0.55. And then we can see here that the experimental data of quasi-elastic scattering cross-section can be well reproduced by the coupled channel calculation with a 0.55 femtometers. And then also we try to, and this is our new research, try to study the effect of surface diffuseness on fusion and quasi-elastic scattering. In the fusion, of course, with the A is very important because small a will overestimate the experimental data in well below the barrier, and then the large A is more steep. But the more clearly so in the fusion barrier distribution, where the small surface diffuseness parameter give you the more smoothed peak of in the fusion barrier distribution, and also in the quasi-elastic barrier distribution we see the similar features. This is for the system oxygen 16 plus samarium 154, where samarium 144 it is known as the spherical nuclei. For the form target, we can see also that there is no, there is no difference in the structure of the barrier distribution, both for the fusion and quasi-elastic barrier distribution. The difference can be seen in the fusion cross-section and quasi-elastic cross-section. Here we can see that the small fusion surface diffuseness overestimate the experimental data for energy well below the barrier. Of course, for energy above the barrier, we still have to include another coupling in order to explain the experimental data. So this is, there are so many works. I mean, there are so many things that we have to do in order to explain the experimental data. So before I end my, this is the summary of our talk my talk today, that until now, our model can explain the experimental data very well. I mean, the theory and an experiment, they are agree to each other. And then the long journey of my research, long time of our research with my collaborators. I would say to thank you to my collaborator from Tohoku University, and then Japan Atomic Energy Agency, and Australian National University Australia, and ISST University of Egypt, University of Malaya, Kuala Lumpur, and then International Islamic University of Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, and also all my colleagues in Hallelujah University, and also my student and my first student. Thank you very much. And also this is the end of my talk today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Samrun. It's a nice talk, but yeah, for me it's hard to follow, but yes, this is a chance. Then yeah, as Prof. Samrun already summarized his work, that they're working for 10 years. It's a long time work, and then but it's and then produce, I think, more publication, and they want to see what's happened in the in the fusion reaction or quasi-elastic scattering, and they're doing model. There is a potential model before the first, and then they add the couple of in the potential in, so they say the model of couple channels formulation or model. So is a couple of what we call nuclear potential and column potential. So this is good result, Prof. Samrun, and thank you very much for your presentation. And the time now, we are going to come to the time of Q&A. And then we have from now to 12 is about 43 minutes actually, if you want to take all the time. So now in my screen, there is a few, there is some question. And then hope our attendees, please make a question, more question to our panelists today in Q&A room. So please write your question and I will deliver to our panelists. So while we're doing that, I will going to the first question to Dr. Warwick. It's the question from Sharul Ulum. You know him.
I know that man.
Yes. I saw from the list that PDBT ITIC has efficiency of 10.2%. This is the solar cell. I mean, have we made nanoparticle organic photovoltaic devices from this material? How about that?
Right, so Rule's talking about the nanoparticulate OPV devices that we also make in the group, which I didn't actually really discuss at all today, and which I think Paul discussed a couple of years back. But basically, we take the organic materials that we print, and we can actually make suspensions or dispersions in water and print them from water, which is advantageous, of course, basically because you're not working with the toxic and legislatively difficult solvents, organic solvents that we typically have to print out of. When we're looking at the standard P3HT PCBM type devices, so the standard simple devices that I was talking about before, we get about a 1 to 1.5% efficiency out of them. But then the best devices you can get out of organic solvents for these materials is around about 4%.
Oh,
and what we see typically for nanoparticles is the efficiency of the nanoparticulate devices is always around about half of the organic blended materials. We have made nanoparticles out of TDBCT and ITIC. Yes, you should be able to get about 10.2% out of the simple devices. So the student who made the devices managed to, instead of getting 10.2%, was getting about 6% for the actual efficiency of the standard devices. And when she made nanoparticles, she gets about 2.5%. Okay, so we're in the process of basically, as we make these materials ourselves, of basically trying to optimize that to improve the efficiencies. But I'm quite hopeful that we can get up over 3%, maybe even 4% out of the nanoparticulates.
Yeah, thank you very much for the answer, and hope Sarul pay attention on it. Yes. Okay. And going to the second question from Muhammad Yudhistira Asis, and the question to Prof. Dahlang. What the typical absorption, maybe this, what the typical absorption of for your wastewater material sorbent, what they call chemist absorption or physical absorption, it is any typical pollutant, organic pollutant beside dye that you use as object for pollutant removal? Is the question
Okay,
is clear
thanks
to you?
Thank.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, really clear. So basically, for when we say a chemical absorption or physical absorption, that's mean they modify the materials. But in this case, no. We use as a photocatalyst. That's mean we maximize the energy from the light from the suns, and then the light the electron of the valence band will gain the energy from the suns, and then they have a chance to excite its state to the conduction band. At that time, electron at the conduction band will going to the pore of the activated carbon, and inside that the process will be start. So this come from the electron. Electron will be disturbed the O2, and then become O2 become a radical. And in other hand, at the valence band there is a hole. Hole will going to move to the pore of activated carbon, and inside that will be they start the H2O, and H2O become OH minus as a radical, and then the radical will going to disturb the structure of the chemical bonding. So there is a double bonding and single bonding. They start with the double bonding, and then they break up the bonding, and then they attach, and then they disturb another bonding until they remain the CO2 and H2O. So this is not, there is not attached. When we say absorption, it's mean they attach on the surface for chemical or physical. They are like a change the electronic properties, but this in this case is no. So the material that we use for that's we are going now to for removal pesticide, rhodamine B, and also of course methylene blue and methylene orange. So this is kind of the dye, and also we are going to the for removal pesticide and rhodamine B. Thanks. It's
Okay.
clear for the moderator.
Hope Muhammad Yudhistira Aziz can follow your answer. And then the next question from the same person, from Yudhistira Aziz to Warwick Belser. The question is how to improve the selectivity and sensitivity of organic electronics equipment as biosensing. And then the next question is, have you commercially your product in other country, like Indonesia maybe? Yes.
So with regards to the selectivity and the sensitivity, we are very lucky, I guess, in terms of the design of the biosensor that we're building, in that the selectivity is based completely around the enzyme that basically we use. So in this case, for the glucose, for example, we're using glucose oxidase, which is highly selective to glucose. So simply by incorporating the glucose oxidase in there means that we have a highly selective device by itself. So the initial test that we've done shows that a whole range of other things that we can add that would naturally be found in saliva, for example, number of proteins and things like that, have no effect whatsoever on the glucose signal. The question about the sensitivity is really a good one, because as I alluded to, we need to get down to 10 times, 100 times more sensitive than blood, basically glucose, to be able to detect it at saliva levels. And here the key to the sensitivity now is to do with the doping of the P3HT, or the material between our two electrodes. If we start and we can actually get a very non-conductive P3HT, so if we can de-dope the P3HT, then it starts out with an incredibly low conductivity. That means that basically even small amounts of the acid that is generated from the glucose lead to very large increases in conductivity. And that means that we have high sensitivity. So a lot of our research and a lot of the development that's gone into this product, or these devices, has been how can we get as low an initial conductivity at that P3HT. And so we've successfully done that now. We now have good sensitivity down to the lowest of the glucose levels for saliva. With regards to commercialization, these haven't been commercialized yet. Okay, so IQ Group, the commercial entity that's basically helping with the commercialization, is still in a fundraising area. Basically, they're looking to raise about $100 million to basically take this to the next step, to full commercialization, and that's only really been slowed down, regrettably, because of the COVID crisis. So they're looking to raise that money, and because of basically the very high fluctuations in basically stock markets and things like that around the world, at the moment it's been a very tricky time to actually raise money, because many companies and many investors are not looking to want to invest in what they may perceive as a relatively high risk investment. However, we are basically still in the process of doing that, and from what I understand, that's going along quite well now. So hopefully commercialization should be in the next year or two. When it is, it will be global. We'll basically be producing this and commercializing it and trying to get it into every country in the world, basically because we think it's a really good product and something that's actually worthwhile.
Yes, thank you. And then, yes, more question for you, Warwick. Actually, people are very keen to think
That's okay.
that, yeah. So the next question for you is, I hope there are another question. To our attendees, so please make question in the Q&A room, so I can check. Yeah, so I got it here from Ahmad Pausi. Question to Warwick. Can your research on solar cell be applied to solar panel of the satellites? Thank you.
That's a really good question. So we have had interest and have actually had discussions with NASA because they were interested in, when they saw, we actually had an American defense grant basically, which was seen by NASA, and they were interested in the products or the materials because of that. So there's good news and bad news in terms of basically applying this to satellites and to space travel and things like that. Firstly is that unlike typical silicon solar cells, these devices actually work very well at high temperatures. Okay, so as you go up in temperature, they actually become more efficient, whereas a typical silicon solar cell will become less efficient. The problem is, though, is that when you get into space, the heat fluctuations are very big. And going from sub-zero conditions, well sub-zero, very sub-zero, to potentially hundreds of degrees when you have sunlight shining on these is just way too much of a temperature differential for these cells to survive. So they're really only going to ever be for terrestrial applications.
Yes, it's a very challenging things work.
Yeah.
And then the next question from the person you know as well. From Anang Dia. Yes, you got it.
It's lovely to see you, mate.
Yeah, is that saying, but you can't see him. What is the intention by doing? What is the intention by doing recycling the OPP plastic Is that because the environmental issue, or maybe due to the expensive material, or you use it again?
So the idea behind the recycling is primarily as an environmental issue. It's the responsibility as scientists that when we put out a product, we really should see it from the first conception of the product right through to making sure that any materials that we create get taken out of the environment system, you know, so that we don't ruin things. However, having said that, one thing that we are looking at to try and do is that we use many kilometers of PET film. And that is actually now probably the most expensive part of our solar cells, ironically, is simply the plastic that we print them on. And we are actually starting to look at, can we actually recycle that film, those rolls of film, and actually reprint on them? And the first signs are that, yes, we can. And that it works reasonably well once we clean it. I'm also just because I'm a chemist and I know how incredibly hard it is to make some of these beautiful chemicals, I'm also very keen to see whether we can recycle and repurify the actual materials, the active materials in the active layer. Now, I don't ever think that will be commercially viable. I think the cost of the recycling and of the purification will be way too much to actually want to use that as a method for making more devices. However, having said that, it's just for my own satisfaction, I would really like to be able to see these materials recycled. So it's primarily because of the environmental issue, but in terms of the actual plastic sheeting and plastic rolls, it's because of the expense. The second part of the question.
Yeah, the second part is.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Do you want me to continue?
Yes, please.
Sorry. So Anand's asking, I know why he's asking this, because Anand, when he was in Newcastle, worked on making P.PSS, so conducting polymer, as part of his degree. We are now making large-scale, high-conductivity P.PSS. To be honest, I do not know, if you like, the exact recipe that it's Nathan Cooling who's doing it. I don't know the exact methodology that he's using, but I do know that basically by doing that, we're getting materials that are as good as the ones that we purchase and are a fraction of the cost, less than 1/10 of the cost of the standard materials. Now, P.PSS isn't a majorly expensive part of the device fabrication, but it's our general philosophy that if we can lower the cost and do it in-house at scale, any of this, that we will do that. So I guess if you want to talk to me, Anand, later, I'm more than happy to give you details on how we're making that and what we're making. But other than that, I think that's probably an adequate answer for this moment.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much, Warwick.
No problem. Thank you.
And then we continue to the next question to Prof. Dahlan Tahir. Maybe you already see the question,
thanks.
but I will say
Yes,
rather than people didn't hear about the question. And you said the question from Nova, maybe Nova Indah.
Yes.
That you prepare already 4 types of nanocomposite for electromagnetic and light absorption, and there are 4. So from those type nanocomposites, which one is better for dye absorption, and then also for electromagnetic absorption? Maybe they presented this one. Okay, and then as we know that every materials which have different components will show different characteristics. Yes. So how about the question, the answer?
Yes. Okay, thanks for the question by Nov Indah. Okay, thanks to the moderator. Yeah, of course, the last one is the best for after this is the long-term research. We start with the iron, and then iron oxide, Fe2O3 and FeTO4, and then going to add cobalt And then the best is when we use a cobalt Fe2O3. Why? Because when you apply for the electromagnetic absorbing material, so that can be going up to the high frequency is around 11 to 12 gigahertz, compared with the previous like Fe2O3 only until 6 to 7 gigahertz, and if E is around 4 to 5 gigahertz. So this is the move. And then also the high absorption, as I said that before, when they are going to the below the minus 20 decibel, it's mean they can absorb 99% of electromagnetic waves for the specific frequency. In this case, for the cobalt, when you add cobalt, so they are going to minus 69 decibel. It's increased remarkable. It's mean they become more and more can absorb almost 100% of electromagnetic wave for the specific frequency from the 10 to 12 gigahertz. And when you apply for the dye absorption also, you can see they are increased. It's mean the number of the dye for the specific time. Example, that's for if E, they are only 85% for the 90 minutes. But when we use oxide, they can reduce the time and also increase the efficiency. Of course, also for cobalt Fe2O3, they increase and reduce the time for the photocatalyst when you apply for the absorption of the dye. Sorry, not the absorption, but the photocatalyst. That's my answer. The moderator. Hello. Yes. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Prof. Dahlan, for the answer. And then hope Nova Indah, maybe Nov Indah, follow your answer. And
satisfy my answer.
yes, satisfy, yes. And then if not, you can talk later.
You can send email.
Yes, send email or finding contact of Prof. Dahlan and talk to him.
Yeah.
Yes, and then that's the question. But I am as moderator, I can have a question as well. If there is no to our attendees, you have a question, more question, please. We still have time. Yes, we have more time, around 20 minutes to go. While we're waiting the question from our attendees, I have as a moderator, I want to have a question to Professor Samrun. Are you there, Professor? Pak Samrun, oke. Pak Samrun, ini karena saya mau bertanya ini. I want to have a question for you because no one have a question for your topic, and then so how many publication already resulted from 10 years working on your problem with the scattering and reaction, Paschen reaction?
How can it's maybe around at least 1 per year. At least 1 per year. I think it's more than
1 per year. So 10. Yeah. Okay, that's very good.
Recently, for this, 3 years because I'm too busy with my jobs. But at least 1 per year for us international publication.
That's very good.
Of course, it's difficult for me because I have no friends here, so I have to find a collaborator from outside of Indonesia.
You're right, because it's for theoretical person in Indonesia, it's rarely to find, and mostly applied like Prof. Dahlan. Thank you very much, Prof. Samrun. And then while we're waiting, and I have a question for Warwick and also for Prof. Dahlan, that dispose the material on PET is very good. I see the video, But what about the solution resulted that wipe it already? Is this harmful, or is this okay for our environment?
You're talking about the recycling of the PET?
That's right. The solution, because the PET become clear, but the solution there, where you throw it? Yeah.
So what was actually in that bath? It's a sonication bath. So it sonicates basically to help remove it. And what we had was a bit of chlorinated solvent. So in that case, it was dichloromethane with water on top to prevent the dichloromethane evaporating. Once it's all been put through and basically all of the organic materials are in the dichloromethane, what we do is we separate off the organic layer, the dichloromethane layer, which is rich in the organic materials. And then we basically, and at the moment, we simply rotovac off the dichloromethane and use it again.
I see.
And then we end up with solid, all the organic materials that we had in the device is a solid film or solid material that we can dispose of or recover. And the dichloromethane, as I said, is fully recovered and reused so that we don't waste any.
I see. So use it. And then Prof. Dahlang as well. You in your absorption, dye absorption of the photocatalyst, you already got the clean water. But what about the quality of the water? Is it drinkable or usable, or have you tested? Prof. Dahlang, are you there? Prof. Or maybe it's going out.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Sorry. Yeah. But what about the absorption of the dye?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. You got the clean water. You hear me, Prof. Dahlang? You hear me? Oh, it's hard. Something like a technical problem. Then we wait, and if it's not, the more question come. So it's fitting about we end this session, and when we prepare for the parallel session. Prof. Dahlang.
I'm sorry.
You hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
The basic. Yes. Yep. I'm sorry. There is a connection unstable in here.
No worries, man.
Well, problem again.
We hear you.
Okay. So the typical water, that's basically this is the still laboratory scale, and now we are going to the real environment. So this year, we have research terapan, applied research in Indonesia. Do you know? Yes, terapan. So we have a collaboration with other industrial to use our product, and then we try to the real environment. So we are now going to make the small scale environment like a real, and then maybe next year will be the real environment applied to the real environment. So it's in up to now still in laboratory scale, but we use the different kind of the pollutant, pesticide. Now we are going to the pesticide and rhodamine, medical pollutant. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Dahlang. Yes, that's that we do in the lab. Yes. Okay, and then there is a question actually come here, but is it already explaining before? Is to Mr. Wolik Belcher. but this is the question. But maybe you already see that's how long your research can be applied for commercial.
So I guess we would already be commercializing it if we'd had the investment. Basically, as in all these things, it's always difficult to get the money to actually be able to take it that step from prototyping to actual commercial. We now have a commercial partner who is looking to invest and to create a facility to actually build these solar cells at scale. That should be starting, again, COVID-19 is slowing everything down, but that should be starting next year to actually develop and build that factory to be able to do it. So I would be anticipating that at least in niche positions, so that won't necessarily be large scale commercialization, but by 2022, I would hope that we would see commercial devices out and being purchased by people.
Okay, thank you very much. And how about maybe the question, because we out of the question, but the question for me, what about the solar panel?
so don't worry, solar paint is still very much on the charts. It's just that the last couple of applications that we've had, we've basically looked to try and get as high efficiency using the materials that we've been printing at scale. So we are still developing the solar paint. I certainly think that is the future of this technology, is to use it to be able to print it from water. And we have certainly shown that we can produce the amounts of the inks for solar paint, these nanoparticulate dispersions, we can produce it at scale sufficient that we can print kilometers and kilometers of the solar cells. So yes, it's definitely going to happen. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Thank you very much for your explanation, Warwick. And Prof. Dahlan, thank you very much for with us in this session, plenary session. Prof. Muhammad Samrun Firihu, thank you very much. Bothering you in your actually now for about 2 hours working day.
Okay.
Yes, thank you very much. And I think I want to check if there is more question come before we end this session, because and maybe
then I have a question to Professor Muhammad Samrum Firihu.
Oh, please.
Hello, the moderator. Okay,
please.
I want to know, because as a rector, this management take a time. So how to manage? Because I know in here also there is a dean from the Mathematics and Natural Sciences Tadulako University, Dr. Darmawati Darsis, also start to be busy with management. So can you share how to manage your time with the research? As I know, research is just take a time to be expert in your field, and hopefully and all like Dr. Darmawati can follow you and then still can have a research in his field. Okay, share for us. Thanks.
The question is for me?
Sorry, the question is for you, how to manage your time, because as you know, the management is quite busy for the management, but I hear that you have also publication for the every year. It means you did also research, and because in here also there is a leader of the Mathematics and Natural Sciences, Dr. Darmawati. So you can share to us, maybe in the next, maybe one of us in here become leader also in our university. I'm sorry. Maybe that you can share to us.
Okay, thank you very much. Of course, how to manage the time is very difficult for me, but because I already done this research for, I mean, for long term, starting from when I was in master degree 2002 until now. So at least because I just need a computer. So this is simple for me because I just need a computer and I just need the internet connection to communicate with another people in all around the world. And then I just need to access the journal and then to read it and compare with my research. So maybe because I am not an experimentalist, so I can work. I mean, in my office, in any time, in my office, in my home. I just need a computer and a table and internet connection. So, but actually, I mean, because even just only need a computer and the internet connection, of course, it takes time for me. That's why when I was, because I starting the Dean 2015, and then to become a rector 2017. So of course, when I was, I mean, faculty leader and university leader, I mean, I do the research, but just only maybe 20 or 30%. It's not maximal for my research. Just only so that's why. But because I have I have a team in my research. I do the research not only for the theoretical physics, but only I have another group for experimental physics. So I have the team. Of course, yes, it's very hard to manage the time, but also. But one thing that I have to believe that if you do the best, you will get the best results. So even you're busy, even you have many other things to do, but if you do with your best, you will get the best result. So that's my answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for
answer.
Yeah.
That
I
is
can
an
say that
excellent
the key
answer.
point is for resetting.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So we are coming to the end of the session, and then I hope we will have a closing statement from every panelist. So starting from Warwick Belser and Prof. Dalang and Professor Samrun. Okay, Warwick.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this. It's great to see that, especially at this time of difficulties, that we can still come together and have excellent science discussed and shared with other people. I'd just like to move on and just reiterate or carry on a little bit from what Mohammed just said about, you know, why we do this and how we do this and how we manage to find the time. And I think the key is, for me at least, is I do this because I love what I do. You know, I often say that if I wasn't paid to do this, I would do it as a hobby, because, you know, I would just be doing it for free, because it's part of who I am and it's part of what I love to be. And I hope that basically that's what we can share with other people, that we can spread is passion. And the fact that, you know, even in small universities, we can make a big difference by doing excellent research.
That's right.
And you know, this is why conferences like this are invaluable. You know, I think it's wonderful that you're hosting it, and I'm delighted to have been part of it. Thank you very much, and thank you to the organizing committee.
Thank you very much, Warwick. Prof. Dalang.
Only I want to say thanks to the organizing committee, to the dean, to the all participant also, because hopefully we can have a collaboration with Tadulako University, continue collaboration with. I know the dean is busy, but Prof. Samrun say that the key point is a team. They have a member, a team, and the moderator is a team of the dean. As I know. Thank you for all of you. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And then from Professor Muhammad Samrun Pirihu.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm happy to be here today to know each other, to know Warwick from Australia, and then Prof. Dahlan from Hasanuddin University. And then with this conference, we know each other. We know our friends do what they do and then what they want to get. But I totally agree with Warwick. I do this because I love this. So I do the research because I love my research. So if we do like something and we get the best result. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy your research and then you will get the best result of your result. Thank you very much. And I hope the communication is not only finished here and then we can continue in another maybe collaboration or we can make MOU from my university and your university, and then we can broad all the research in Indonesia and all around the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. As a moderator, I say thank you very much for all the panelists, Dr. Warwick Belcher, Professor Dahlan Tahir, and then Professor Muhammad Samrun Firihu. Thank you very much for your time and then for any kind of helps to prepare this session or to prepare this your involved in this seminar. Thank you very much for everybody.
Thank you.
And then now we will have the time for rest. So if you have the time to to come to the parallel session, we start at 1 here in Palu. So Australia maybe 2 hours in the front, 3 hours. Oh, see, 2 hours. Yeah, 2 hours. So around 15. Yeah, so you can come and join the parallel session if you want. Thank you very much, everyone, again. And then,
bye. Padahal dicari sama Nila.
Oh iya, makasih Prof.
Salam sama Ida ya.
Oh iya, salam balik Prof. Yeah.
So maybe one day we can talk on Zoom as well, Warwick.
Okay.
With
Okay. Thank you very much.
You can organize Prof. Samrun.
Nice
Yeah.
to see you. Nice to see you all. Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you, all of you.
Salam.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yes. Enjoy the rest of course, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. You want to say something, Pak Pasjan, as a chair of the conference?
Oke, terima kasih banyak Prof. Dahlan, Pak Rektor.
Sama-sama, Pak.
Terima kasih banyak. Semoga kedepannya masih bisa bekerja sama lagi, Pak.
Insya Allah.
Amin. Insya Allah. Insya Allah.
Terima kasih banyak.
Baik, terima kasih. Izin pamit sekalian ya. Salam sama Pak Bu Dekan, salam sama Pak Rektor. Semuanya oke, thank you.
Ya. Saya juga pamit ya. Kak Eli. Pak Pasjan.
Iya, iya Prof.
Ya, iya.
Ya,
ada Pak Wahid di sini, nah cari Ki.
Iya.
Nah tunggu Ki balik ke Unhas. Halo Kak Dharma, sudah Kak Eli. Ya, saya pamit dulu ya.
Siap, thank you.
Ya, ya, terima kasih.